I'm going to give you the headline here. This is really, really big information coming from the VA that can affect veterans and spouses alike. I'm going to give just straight from the VA's mouth. This just came out February, and but it's one of those, it's almost a public service announcement at this point, to be prepared if this comes through as proposed, which I'm hoping it does sooner than later. I'm going to read a couple spots in here, and then I'm going to pass it to you, Clay, for your initial thoughts and reactions on this piece of news. So VA, and this again, I'm reading it directly from the VA's site here. VA moves to expand Agent Orange veterans benefits using authorities from the PACT Act. VA proposes rule to extend presumed areas of exposure to Agent Orange and make it easier for toxic exposed veterans to receive earned benefits and health care. The other piece I'm going to read is VA's new proposal would give expanded presumptive benefits to veterans who served in locations where Agent Orange was tested, used, or stored outside of Vietnam, including locations in Canada, India, and military locations in 12 United States states, including Montana, because this is from the senator's site. So they put in Montana because that's where he's from. So anyway, what are your thoughts on how big this is and how people might not be realizing how big this is?
Yeah, so my initial thoughts, so I have a coworker when the PACT Act was passed, and I should preface this was, those old grumpy senile veterans that are just mad at the world? This is him, okay? So no matter what we do, he's angry. So when the PACT Act was passed, and it was backdated to August of 22, we had burn pits in Kosovo and whatever he said, right? And we were exposed to toxins, but I don't meet the Gulf War era or the Vietnam era, so I'm screwed. Basically, this is that, okay? Saying, hey, relax, we got you. And what I want to hit on specifically is the VA already identified locations, locality, and time frames. That's done for you. All you need to say was, I was there. And I do want to add, and I don't know specifically, I would like to have the entire bill, but I would probably assume transportation of toxins, specifically Agent Orange, specifically on naval ships, will be included as well. And that will be big because if you've ever been on ship, which is absolutely sucks, imagine having Agent Orange on a ship that you're with 6, 7, 8, 9 months. All this stuff is passed and you're forgotten about. That's a bad feeling. Okay. And I could definitely see that. So this definitely makes that, it kind of makes it more, it's a fix. Okay. The VA is like, hey, we thought about the PACT Act, but we didn't think about everything. That's my interpretation of the new, the VA news that we have. Other than that, Jason, that's really all I got on the VA news for the PACT Act. One more thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Everyone says PACT Act, and I'm roping the PACT Act with this into one. Everyone thinks disability. The disability is kind of like a third of this legislation. The large part is healthcare. Okay, it's healthcare, predominantly centered towards the older generation of veterans. That piece is absolutely huge for those that have cancers and survivors, which I think Jason is going to hint towards here. But it's really a healthcare piece for those veterans that was missing for 60 years now. So that's a long time. Okay, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Long time coming, should have been there thousands of years ago, whatever. I get all that. In a weird way, better late than never. I'm not going to say, well, then forget about it. Nobody gets it then, right? So here's a couple pieces that I get from this and what people need to understand. And I have heard from a veteran service officer and office level and at the state levels, many, many people go, why don't I have presumptives for Agent Orange? It was at the base I was at. We used it, blah, blah, right? Used, tested, stored. thousands of people upset about it. And it's hard to prove your exposure. It's hard to create the nexus when it's like, well, where was it stored? Did you actually physically spray it? Did you really smell it? Right. So it's hard to get service connected for a lot of these situations. You're talking about locations in 12 different states throughout the US, locations in Canada, India. And what this is going to do now is any veteran who served in any one of these locations during these specified timeframes, which were gathered from DOD. DOD said, yep, we had Agent Orange at this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, this time frame, this time frame, this time frame. So if you served in any of these locations, which it's a whole other video, then if you have any of the presumptive conditions for Agent Orange, you have, for example, high blood pressure. Now all of a sudden, you're service connected for high blood pressure, hypertension. Well, now guess what? Life is a conveyor belt. Someday you're going to pass away. And let's say you pass away from a heart attack. Well, guess what? Your surviving spouse, because they're educated, like Clay likes to say, knows, hey, when this death certificate's being completed, please include in there as a contributing cause to death, the heart attack, hypertension as a contributing cause. Please, thank you very much. Now you have the death certificate that says passed away, heart attack, primary cause of death, contributing cause of death, hypertension. Wonderful. File that for your dependency indemnity compensation, which, oh, by the way, pays out $1,600 and change per month as a base rate and will go all the way up to over $3,000 per month, depending on the different various add-ons. So this is not just big for thousands and thousands of veterans out there, but it's also big for probably even more surviving spouses, because some of these veterans may have already passed away. So, side note, veteran already passed away. This goes into law. Spouse can now file for dependency indemnity compensation, linking all these things together. Highly suggest working with an accredited veteran service officer, veteran service rep, veteran office, whatever, somebody who's accredited with the VA. But this is going to be a big deal, I believe, because it's really, really, there's a lot of folks that didn't go to Vietnam. There's a lot of folks that were in the US still, and guess what? They have a lot of the same conditions, which is the whole purpose, right? One of the other rules that, another great thing about the PACT Act, like you said, it's not just about adding presumptives. It gave the VA the ability to essentially determine what conditions should be listed as presumptive. So instead of farming it out to another organization to figure out if it should be presumptive or not, they can do it within their own, under their own roof. So that's why we were able to add conditions quicker in some cases. And this is part of that, being able to determine the whereabouts in conjunction with DOD, right? So those are saving, those kind of changes for the VA are making it a much quicker process to, I think, identify some shortfalls, right? Or shortcomings and correct those. So anyway, back to you for any final thoughts there, Clay.
No, that's, I like the shortfall example. It's kind of like, you know, if I were to explain this news to my mom, I would say, hey, the VA passed a few things a few years ago. This is kind of like a Band-Aid fix. There were some shortfalls, and now we have this thing. That's it. That's like the Barney style version of what's going on.